on. Hi, everybody. My name is Meg. I'm the Senior Director of the Applied Social Media Lab. And I would love it if you would wrap up your conversations and pay attention to me. Thank you very much. My first order of duty here is to introduce you to Nicole, one of our UX designers, who's going to explain a little bit about NextSpace, which we'll be seeing today. Nicole?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for coming. My name is Nicole Brennan. I'm one of the senior product designers here at ASML.
Be louder.
Be louder. Is this better? All right, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hi, my name is Nicole Brennan. I'm a senior product designer here at ASML. We're very excited to show you something we've been building. Do I need to click? Oh, you're clicking. Thank you. Please meet the event assistant. It's your go-to companion for staying engaged and getting more out of our events and getting more value. Think of it as like a tiny superpower in your pocket. It's something that listens along during a session and can catch you up instantly if you happen to drift, get distracted, what have you. You can ask things like, what was the name of that organization that they just mentioned? Or what was the name of that author? Or you can tell it, I zoned out, can you catch me up to the last minute, something, whatever I missed. You can try it out actually right now at the brk.mn/event-bot. Quick transparency note, we run it on OpenAI, a 4.0 mini model, which runs through the Harvard API proxy. It's something that collects a pseudonymized, such a hard word, sorry, pseudonymized message log. It's visible to the team, but obviously we don't know who you are as you interact. Big news, we went open source this week, which is fantastic, and we're celebrating. Thank you. We're so excited. We appreciate it. Jen is going to share more about this right after this talk. If you have any thoughts, ideas, bold opinions, we would love to hear them all. Please do send them. We have a brk.mn/feedback and would absolutely love to hear from you. Next, we're going to hear from our PIs, Professor Mickens and Professor Richardson. And if you could come up, it would be great. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, as my dad, who was also a professor, would always tell me, there's like a main rule of being a PI, which is 5 Bs. Be brief, brother. Be brief. Don't get in the way of the main content. I just want to say I'm so excited to see so many people there. You know, we've been running ASML for close to 2 years now, I guess, and it's great to see the projects come to fruition. And I think that the most exciting thing about ASML is that we had this experiment that if you took people who are technologists but care about the law and policy, and we sort of put them in contact with people who know about law and policy but aren't technologists in their everyday day job, that like great things would come out of that. And I think that you're going to see some examples of some of the great stuff that's come out of that. And I think that later on, when we talk about TikTok and things like this, you'll also see a lot of the interesting types of analyses that are only possible in the type of setting we think that we've tried to create here, which is sort of like an academic a setting where you nonetheless bring in people who are classically trained as engineers, but want to work with folks who are outside of their discipline. So we're so excited to have you here. Let me just turn over the mic to JZ for some reflections.
All right. Thank you, Mickens. It's a pleasure working with you over these years on all things ASML. And I'm so grateful for all the work of the engineers, the project managers, designers, the leadership, all of you. Thank you so much, Meg, team, for what you've been able to cook up. Mark Twain said that everybody is always talking about the weather, but nobody ever does anything about it. I guess that's changing now. I don't know. The carbon atmosphere sulfuric acid is beyond the scope of ASML, but very few other things are. And you're going to see the kaleidoscopic work as you look at the different posters around the wall. And changing the world is hard. So again, we're so grateful for all the work that's gone into this, often at a distance and having to overcome various activation energies. Really grateful for all of you for coming out to check it out and perhaps to look for points of connection. Our center really does work to draw in as many people as want to be involved and to find meaningful and useful ways to contribute. So I hope, Meg, you'll be able, when you have the mic, to say exactly how you'd prefer to hear from people who want to critique, what is the survivor motto? Outlive, outlast, be brief, be gone. Yeah, whatever it might be. But great to see how, you went to the trouble of coming all the way to the 5th floor, which I think is really the 4th floor, but don't tell anybody. Formerly the roof of this building. But anyway, you came all this way. Perhaps you want to, metaphorically, at least stay a while, and delighted to talk about what that might look like. So with that, I will turn it back over to you to introduce and thank our guest for arriving up today and discuss. And I do hope you'll give NextSpace a spin. Let's see if we can crash it. Okay.
Thank you very much, Susie. I appreciate that. One of the first ways we do want to hear from you is by going here and asking your questions and really, I mean, don't red team it, but maybe do, right? So I've been scooped a little bit, but just to reiterate what our lovely PIs said about us, we are a 2-year experimental pop-up lab, and we are bringing trained industry technologists into an academic setting to rethink, reboot, and rebuild social media. We have 3 faculty directors, 1 senior director, that's me, 2 product managers, 2 UX designers, partridge in a pear tree, that's very seasonal, and 5 research assistants right now, but really this has been an incredible gathering place for all sorts of folks. We've had an amazing group of RAs over and over again in our 2 years, and also we've had so many folks come to, this is the 2nd synthesizer we've done. And we're really just so appreciative of all of you coming and sharing your posters and talking with us about the work that we're all trying to do together, which is really to build a new internet, right? And the way that we think about that is not just to fix the internet that we already have, but to think about the internet that we want and the internet that we deserve. But we do also have to reckon with the internet that we currently have. And so I am very pleased to introduce our guest, Emily Baker-White. She's a technology reporter at Forbes, where her TikTok coverage has given me lots of FOMO and envy of her editors. It's incredible. If you are not familiar with it, you should immediately sign up for every alert with her name on it. She's the author of Every Screen on the Planet, which is the first, and likely will always be the best, in-depth investigation of TikTok. And so we are so pleased to have her here today. She's an HLS grad, so welcome home. She previously led the Plainview Project, which is an investigation into police misconduct on Facebook, and was a criminal defender, and she lives in Philly, which is weird, but she should come here. All right, thank you so much, and Emily, happy to turn it over to you.
Testing. That's kind of working. Okay. Can y'all hear me? Does this need to be louder?
No.
Great. Love it. Love to hear it.
Said no.
I'm Emily Baker-White. I am an investigative reporter. I was once a lawyer, and I'm going to spend just a couple minutes explaining how I went on that very strange journey, which for a while also involved being a advisor to big tech companies. So I came to law school wanting to do public interest work, graduated from law school with a public service venture fellowship, if that's still a thing, went and defended guys on death row in Philadelphia and thought that was what I was gonna do for the rest of my life. I loved it. It was super meaningful. It was sort of classic public interest work. And I was working up a police brutality claim in 2015, I am old, in that job. And I searched a few of the involved officers' names on Facebook. Back then, Facebook was the social media company du jour. It was what everyone was using. And I was surprised and not surprised to find that a number of these officers had completely public-facing Facebook profiles where they were saying all manner of things. And I was shocked by that. They were talking about their cases, they were referring to suspects and protesters as animals, they would get into these awful doom loops where they would talk about how each of them was going to do something more violent than the last to a given suspect or protester. And I was totally horrified. Today that might not make news, but in 2015, times were gentler, and it did. And so I ended up spending 2 years of my life building something called the Plain View Project, which was a big interactive database of statements that hundreds and hundreds of police officers across the country had made publicly on Facebook that could affect public trust in policing for whatever reason. And to do that, I worked with a small team and a technologist who ended up scraping 835,000 Facebook posts. And then my team reviewed those Facebook posts to see, is this relevant to our project, or is this a picture of a pie someone made last week? Reviewing 830,000 posts by America's cops really did something to my brain that I still don't fully know what it is. And of course, it was alarming when it came to politics and misinformation and policing in this country, but it was also just a group of American people going way down weird tech rabbit holes for the first time, and even divorced from politics and divorced from civil rights. The experience of vicariously living those people's lives online for years as I sorted through them was super weird. And it made me obsessed, yes, with police brutality, but mostly with Facebook. What was this platform doing? I actually did encounter some material that I now know was Russian disinformation. I encountered a lot more that was likely Macedonian teens making a quick buck. There was just like so much slop. It was before there was AI slop, but there was slop, and I was completely obsessed with why things were getting the eyeballs that they were getting. And after the project, we released the project, it made a big splash. Facebook sort of could have sued me or hired me, and they hired me, and I went and worked in Facebook's policy department, which was a wild ride that I won't talk too much about. I stayed through the 2020 election and then quit, like a lot of people did. And that was also really formative for me in understanding just how much power like random 27-year-olds have over what information millions and millions and millions of people were saying. And I got to think about all the things I wanted to think about when I worked there. I then did the same job at Spotify for a while, banning Nazi podcasts, which was okay. But I didn't want to think about these questions for big tech companies. I wanted to think about them for the public, for the polity, sort of the way that you guys think about them. And the way that I could do that at that moment was to go into journalism. And so that's what I did. And ever since then, I joined BuzzFeed News, then I joined Forbes. I've been doing investigative tech reporting on big tech companies mostly, and on the way that they affect our culture and commerce and discourse and democracy. I am no longer a lawyer. Maybe I will someday be a lawyer again, but I became obsessed with Facebook. I went to Facebook, I went into tech, and then I went into journalism because the internet is where the action is right now. And when I was a student at Harvard Law School 10 years ago, I was in H Lab. I don't know if there are any H Lab members here, but at the time, the Berkman Center was in a little yellow house on Everett Street, and you guys were upstairs from H Lab. We were downstairs from you, apparently with some mice. And we and the mice would just steal all of your event food after you left. And that was basically my relationship to the Berkman Center when I was a student at Harvard Law School. I was among the mice. But you guys knew something I didn't, which was that thinking about internet law was public interest work. It was democracy work. It is constitutional law in all of the broader senses that so many people on this campus probably don't realize, and many more do now, because back then, 10 years ago, the people who were thinking about that were really early to the problem. But yeah, I am not a technologist. I will never be a technologist. I'm a B- tech user. But going out into the real world and trying to practice normal civil rights law This stuff came crashing down on my head, and I have not been able to get it out of my head because the effect that companies have, that internet companies have on understanding who we are today, who we become, what information we consume, how we interact with each other. That is what you guys are studying. This is where the action is, and I am thus so honored to get to be a part of this event today. So. Now we talk about TikTok, which is what my book is. Unlike that talk.
Let's talk about TikTok.
Okay, let's do it.
All right. So when you first started writing about TikTok, did you find it hard to get the editors to listen because it was a dancing app? Or did you join it right when people started to say, oh, okay.
No, it wasn't hard to get editors to listen because I started covering TikTok in early 2022, which is after it hit mainstream appeal. Like, so many people had downloaded it during the pandemic, and so many older people meaning like people over the age of 20, had downloaded it, that it had sort of hit the mainstream by then.
And so I don't want to scoop too many things in your book, but I'm going to do that anyway, and just kind of get right at sort of the heart of the matter, which is that TikTok surveilled you.
Yes, yeah, they did.
Well, first, tell us a little bit about how that happened, and maybe if you could also talk a little bit about the sort of interesting origin story of TikTok that you cover in the book. But tell us how that happened to you, and then I want to know for all Emily. That's where I'm going with this.
Okay. So I started covering TikTok in 2022. I read a story. I go talk to a bunch of people inside TikTok and say, what do people not know about this company that they should know? And they tell me, oh, there's this big secret project called Project Texas. And I'm like, great, that's a story I can write in, journalistic publication. And so I write the story about Project Texas. And Project Texas basically was a way to rewire TikTok's inner workings to limit the amount of American private user data that was accessible to employees in China. And the reason Project Texas was necessary is because TikTok was owned and mostly created by a company called ByteDance, which is a Chinese tech giant. And so, not maliciously, but just because it's how the tech was made, all of Americans' sort of personal TikTok data was accessible to a bunch of people in China, and there were a lot of people worried that since Chinese companies can be forced to turn over information to the Chinese government, that meant the Chinese government might choose to get that information about Americans. That was Project Texas. I write the story. It's a nice little story. Like 10,000 people read it, which is not a lot of people. But one of those people was a person who worked at TikTok, who then sent me an email saying, Project Texas, want more? Which is like
The best email you
the
could
best
possibly
email
get
you can get
in
as
the world.
a journalist. It's really a top-notch email. And so I'm like, yeah, in fact, I would like more. And that person, it turns out, had made a lot of recordings of internal meetings at TikTok, which they eventually shared with me. And so I was able to listen to many, 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 many hours, over I think 80 hours, of internal meetings at TikTok, of TikTok employees talking about how to implement Project Texas. At this point, it was really helpful that I'd worked at Facebook and Spotify because like the acronyms alone, just like, they took a very long time. It took a very long time to like understand this material, but it was much easier having worked in trust and safety content policy because that's largely what these people were talking about. And so that's like a really big leak for any company. It's like not a great time for a company that's trying to keep something secret if someone leaks a reporter 8 hours of audio about it. And so that was a big deal. When I went to the company, I said, hey, I have all this information, I'm writing this article, would you care to comment on any of this? And part of the company's response to that was, we gotta find the leakers, we gotta stop the leakers, which if you're ever in a position of advising anyone who's dealing with a leak, pursuing the leakers is not the way. It's just not gonna get you where you wanna go. It's never gonna get you where you wanna go, and it's always more trouble than it's worth. So someone here might someday be in a position where you have this situation. Don't pursue the leakers. The way they tried to pursue the leakers, though, was even worse. They said, okay, if we can just look at the TikTok app on Emily Baker White's phone and get all the IP addresses that phone has pinged from, and compare those IP addresses to the IP addresses of all of TikTok and ByteDance's employee data, like of their employee devices, and see if any of them have been in the same place at the same time. Then we can know who's meeting with Emily Baker White. First of all, we often don't meet sources in person, so I'm not sure why they thought this was going to solve the problem anyway. But that aside, they didn't find anything. That was an enormous, enormous unforced error. They didn't get any information, but I hear about this from people inside the company. They're going to do this. I write a story about it. They denied it. They said, oh, we're not doing that. And then they bring in Covington and they're like, can you figure out why she said we did this? Maybe wait to deny it until after you know if you've done it. They didn't do that. But Covington comes in, writes a big report and says, yeah, actually, okay, there are some employees who did do this. And in doing that, they had proven the thing that TikTok and ByteDance have been telling the US government, the public, anyone who would listen, we're not spying on you. We're really not spying on you. That's not what we do. We're a normal social media app. And then it turns out, actually, they did spy on me specifically in an effort to try to figure out who was leaking to me. And I don't really care that they spied on me. I don't feel like there's someone like outside in the bushes. Like, I'm not afraid. But the fact that this happened to me showed that it actually could have happened to people who could be afraid. And it could have happened in a situation where the Chinese government was trying to figure out where a dissident was. It could have happened in a situation where the Chinese government or some other bad actor was trying to figure out where a politician was or where a politician's staffers were, right? Like, there were ways it could have actually been scary. The way it went down was just dumb, but that really blew up sort of the conversation about TikTok and whether it caused national security risk.
And if you don't mind me asking, do you happen to know where those people who accessed your data were located?
Some of them were in China. The person that the company really sort of blames it on was not in China. He was in the United States. But he says it wasn't his idea. It's a little unclear. People were fired for this after the Covington report came out. The company said, yikes, this is really bad, we did it. They did a little mea culpa the week before Christmas, which is when you do your mea culpa if you're trying to avoid press attention. And they said, this is bad, we're gonna make sure it never happens again. They fired the people involved and they cut off access to the team that those people had been on. They actually then disbanded that whole team. But again, there are other teams, and it could have been on the other teams, and I say in the book, and I've said at other events, like, TikTok is messy, not malicious. And I think that's right. Like, the people who say TikTok is a grand conspiracy, like, set up by the Chinese government, don't know what they're talking about. It's not. But messiness enables malicious actors. And I think the problem with a company like TikTok, and by the way, a company like Facebook, or like Twitter now, X, or many others, is that when you have that degree of chaos, that degree of financially motivated chaos and duplication of work and all of these teams moving all of these directions, there's just a lot of opportunity for legitimate, like, bad stuff to happen.
So I'm assuming this changed your relationship to social media like a little bit. That's an assumption I'm making about you. I'm sort of wondering which changed it more. Was it the experience of reporting about TikTok and having, you be the test case for whether or not, like, this company could surveil someone, or was it working in tech?
Oh, it was definitely working in tech. I mean, I think we can't go back and relive parts of our lives, but if I hadn't worked in tech, I probably would have been more scared and less disappointed. But having seen the way these things work on the inside, I wasn't scared. I was just like, are you kidding me? You did what? Or do you have, was there no meeting where anyone said that might be a bad plan? Like, because I have been in meetings where people have said, that's a bad plan, don't do that, right? And I think one thing about TikTok and reporting on TikTok is, like, we all know the famous Mark Zuckerberg move fast and break things. TikTok grew so much faster than Facebook, and they just moved so much faster and broke so many more things. They just really leaned into that. And, like, at some point, maybe we will not move so fast and break fewer things, but these companies that have incentives to grow at all costs are going to break stuff, and that's maybe not great.
It's maybe not great. It's maybe not great. So your book takes us from the sort of like very beginnings of the dancing app all the way up to the present day. And I don't want to put a lot of pressure on you to sort of like foretell the future of TikTok. But I think a lot of people really enjoy it. I happen to enjoy TikTok, honestly. And we're wondering if these deals that are proposed are going to meaningfully fix what I should not call the Emily problem, but don't get mad at me. But but like, is this? Well, first of all, if you want to be psychic and tell us what's going to happen, please do. But are these the right things for us to be doing? Are they at least the right questions for us to be asking about how these apps are a part of our lives?
I'm gonna ask you to reframe that question a little bit. Are you asking how much the deal, should it go through, would help?
Yes, I
Okay.
know.
So for years now, that first article I wrote about Project Texas, TikTok and ByteDance have been trying to sell the US government on their solution to the Emily problem. I'm never gonna say this outside this room, but you got me for the purposes of this conversation. It's efficient. Their solution has been a sort of series of internal walls that it's changed somewhat over time, but basically today, US users' TikTok data created after a certain date is held in Oracle servers and sort of gate kept by Oracle employees. The recommendations algorithm and other parts of the app are still maintained by ByteDance, but Oracle theoretically just has a sort of oversight function that may or may not like really work. That's supposed to ensure that there is no sort of foreign influence happening and no data leakage happening. My understanding is the deal whereby that data, custody of that data, and control over some but not all functions of TikTok US would be transferred to a new group of US investors, including Larry Ellison, possibly the Kochs or the Murdochs, like have both been named, Silver Lakes and other US investors. It's sort of just like a trumped up, sorry for the pun there, but a trumped up Project Texas, right? Like there's already this separation, custody that would sort of be somewhat further removed from ByteDance and TikTok Global, which is owned by ByteDance. Okay, that probably does help. It probably cuts down on the amount of data being shared between child and parent. It doesn't totally eliminate it. We know that there have been instances of people giving each other their computers and their passwords because they need some data to, do some e-commerce thing. Like, and there will continue to be, because creating a fully hermetically sealed thing with that many employees and that much data is just it's not gonna happen. You can probably get it to 99%. You're never gonna get it to 100%. But going back to your question, are these the things we should care about? Does it really fix the problem if Larry Ellison now decides who gets spied on? The answer is no, okay. So I phrased the question that way and you can see that my answer is no. I think there was a unique problem for TikTok itself because of potential Chinese government influence that made it different than Facebook, X, Instagram, YouTube, whatever else. And I think further separation from the parent, and the devil's in the details on how much separation really is going to happen or not happen, if this deal even goes through, which don't know. But assuming it does, there will probably be some further mitigation of potential Chinese government influence. There is perhaps uniquely more US government influence now, which is also bad, and bad in different ways, but not necessarily less bad ways. And so that's a consideration. The truth is we got these companies that are run by a few dudes who make enormous decisions about our data and which information we see. And we should be skeptical of all those dudes and all the governments that are trying to influence them.
All right. Well, I'd love to take some questions from the audience if we have any at this time.
think so. Direction, yeah. How do you turn that?
Dramatic pause. Okay, hi. Thanks so much. I'm really looking forward to reading your book. I've ordered it on my Kindle so I can start immediately. I'm Allison Stanger. I'm a faculty affiliate at the Berkman Klein Center. And I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are, kind of following up on your question, Meg. You know, is there really a deal here with TikTok? Because I'm just looking at it. I was just researching this before I came over here. What's happened with that? And there's a lot of evidence that suggests there's no deal at all, and we're just kicking the can down the road. So I just wanted you to perhaps comment on that and what might be causing it. I mean, I have my theories, but you're closer to the story, so to speak.
I'm maybe somewhat closer. I have my theories too. I think there's a pretty long history of the president wanting to announce that there's a deal, and then all of the details of the deal / the actual deal kind of like just swept out of the way. And I think this is seeming like it's an example of that. Yeah. There is a contract that has been negotiated between a consortium of investors and ByteDance. It's not clear if that is the same set of terms. The Trump administration say they got an framework agreement from the Chinese in Madrid. So it's like not totally clear if that's even the same thing. The other thing is like ByteDance has spent the last 6 years being told you're gonna have to sell, we're gonna make you sell. And essentially they've said, okay, make us, right? Yeah. And they have done nothing and kept offering their product and waited. And so far that's been effective. And so unless and until someone really says, okay, we're gonna turn the app off unless they're really willing to do that, and maybe even do turn the app off for a while, if I'm ByteDance, I'm not gonna move with any great haste. I would say like what we do know about the deal, Bloomberg reported that ByteDance would get a rev share of new money made by the new investors, like moving forward because of the licensure of the algorithm. Reuters also reported that ByteDance would continue to control both advertising and e-commerce on the platform. And so like, it's really not clear what's in this for the investor group, and that's what really sounds to me like it's just a Trump up Project Texas. It's the same thing that ByteDance has been trying to sell the whole time. Yeah. They continue to get to control at least these various parts of the thing. I haven't seen a copy of the deal because I don't know who's in it,
who the investors are actually, except Ellison, right?
Yeah, Trump has thrown around some names. There's been reporting on a couple of investors. I think there's now Gulf money that reportedly involved in this too. So yeah, there's a lot that we don't know. There's a lot that's been reported, and some of what's been reported I think has changed such that it's no longer accurate too. So it's really hard to know. Some people said Andreessen was in it, and then that totally dropped away, and I don't think that's right. So really hard to know what's going on there. But I think people will slowly start asking questions again, and he will probably do another questionable executive order.
That seems certain.
That seems certain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks. I'm Hillary. I'm curious, we're at a school, and also Berkman is a center that brings together people from a lot of different sectors. And you have a rare career, I would say, in that you have hopped across a number of different sectors, from being trained in law to working in tech to then working in journalism. So I'm curious kind of how you decided to make those jumps, and then what you did to like train yourself and position yourself and figure out how to kind of do that work as you jump sectors.
You don't even know that at first I was going to be a classical violist. I went to conservatory for the I know, it's hilarious. I've had like 12 careers in like 10 minutes. It's very strange. If you think you know where you're going to be in 10 years, you're wrong. I would say, are you a student here?
No, I'm not.
No, you're not. They're for the students here, but also for everyone else here. You are immensely qualified to do many more things than you think you are. And you will be able to take the skills and the resume that got you in this door and apply them to many things that haven't happened yet, so you can't imagine what they are yet. And I hate being a generalist. I wish I had more like specific things that I could do that other people can't do. My husband's like a really good software engineer and he can do these things that I can't do, and I just sort of like go around and talk about stuff. But I am a generalist, much as it is this like curse in my brain, and I think we are all much more generalists than we think we are. And we desperately need more people with different experiences making decisions about technology. What's not great is when you get a bunch of engineers making decisions that end up being sociological and political out in Silicon Valley, most of them white men from the United States. That's not great. And so to the extent that everyone in this room can think about what you know and where you came from and what makes your brain different from the other brains in the room, use that and lean into that, because you are going to be able to help shape the internet for lots of other people in ways that the very smart, engineer or very smart lawyer or whatever it is that those people are that you aren't, you are going to have perspective that they don't have, and I think that's actually really important. And so like, how did I hop from career to career? I followed the action. I followed where the power was. I went to work at Facebook, which is not a company I was very fond of at the time, and was not a company I was very fond of when I left, because there was immense power to do good there. There was immense power to move the ball a little bit. I clerked out of law school, and my judge was among the people who told me, you can't quit before the election, you know that, right? And like, a lot of people told me that. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who in elections since have had the same approach. And the reason that people at these tech companies feel like they can't quit before the election is they know that what they're doing, all the stupid meetings they're going to every day, are moving the election. Like, the power that these companies have is massive. And that's why I went and worked for them. That's why I went and reported on them. There are lots of ways you could do it. You could go sue them, you go investigate them, you go work inside them. You can try to build something better than them that will take a little bit of their power back and give it to the people, and like, all of those things can be really good, but like, there's so much there, and that's ultimately why I made the shifts I did. I don't have the mic. I'm just smiling at people with their hands up. As if I have some power. I was like, yeah, I do, but the mic's over here, so sorry.
If TikTok had, instead of being owned by a company in China, was owned by somebody in Japan, India, Brazil, any other country, would it have caused the same fuss?
Yes and no. I mean, I think Japan, Brazil, what I'm thinking about is like, how much are each of those governments trying to exert control over
Just naming countries
internet
that have a reasonable amount of technical savvy.
Sure, and the question I'm asking in my head is like, are these autocracies, or are they trying to be autocracies? And I think that's what made TikTok scarier to a lot of people. And then now we're on our way to building our own autocracy. So yikes. I think a lot of the questions that we asked about TikTok, a lot of the things that made us nervous about TikTok's potential Chinese influence, now make me nervous about lots of American tech companies too.
Thank you. I think I can.
Just talk loud.
Loudly. Yeah. Follow this person. I mean, the same like I was consulting for Singapore government. I'm from MITC. So anyway, I want to ask this question because you already work for a couple of platforms like.
So do you think the traditional institution nowadays could still have a capability to absorb or governments those kind of the big scale platform or not? Thank you.
Can you repeat your question? You only got the mic halfway through.
I mean, nowadays those kind of traditional institution. I mean now like even U.S., China even, or Singapore or Japan. There's all this kind of political institution or any kind of institution or social institution can still have a capability. I mean, could accept this kind of the big scale platform. It means that we have ability to do that or not. Or what kind of institution we have to, shape. Thank you.
I think our relationship to institutions is changing. When we think about those these really big platforms, we've certainly seen I would say that we've seen a sort of bifurcation, and people have gone into smaller platforms. People have returned to group chats away from the sort of Facebookification of things. At the same time, TikTok is great, massive phenomenon, and are we going to see another one of those? I don't know. I think related to that is that TikTok is not really social media. TikTok is more like Netflix, right? Because you're not watching your friends, you're not really interacting with people you know. It's just entertainment, right? It's just randos. It's entertaining randos, and there's nothing wrong with that. But that's a different thing than Mark Zuckerberg's obviously very flawed, but we're gonna connect the world. And I think there's something a little bit less sticky about TikTok and Netflix. Because I don't know how many people in this room actually routinely use Facebook for anything other than buying cheap stuff. Facebook Marketplace forever, Craigslist of 2025. But we don't use Facebook anymore. But we haven't deleted it not just because of Facebook Marketplace, but also because your second cousin's mom is on there, and you actually do want to see those baby pictures occasionally. And the stickiness of that, Instagram's the same way, right? These are actually people you know, and you kind of do want to stay in touch with them at least a little bit. That's not on TikTok. It's not on YouTube, right? And I think there is something about social media that actually does have a sort of stickiness to us that something like TikTok and Instagram Reels and YouTube doesn't. And so I wonder when we think about what's the next one gonna be? I wonder if it's going to be more social, maybe. Because I feel like that is what's missing from the apps that people are mostly spending their time on today.
Hi, Sam Rosen. Building on what you were just saying, I'm a little bit curious about the post-platform era and more open systems that might tie people in, might engage people, and might have more decentralized control, more user autonomy. I was at a project at another institution in Cambridge last night, Nanda, right, the Internet of Agents. And I'm curious what your thoughts are of what it would take for platforms that return control to users and break down, this both monetization, centralization, as well as the control centralization, what those might look like.
Yeah, so Silicon Valley has spent the last 2 decades obsessed with minimizing friction. That buy now button is smooth. TikTok is smooth, you open it and it just goes, you do nothing, right? And people have to want to take agency back. We have to make effort sexy again somehow for this to work, right? It's when I tried to explain to my mom how Blue Sky worked, and when I tried to actually get her on Blue Sky, I was here are all these feeds, you get to choose which feeds you want, it's really cool, you get to decide, and she was just so overwhelmed by the idea of having to understand how feeds work and go seek them out and choose them. And I think everyone in this room sees a lot of value in being able to go out and create and choose your own feeds. But people love doing nothing. They love having to do nothing. And there's a great amount of money to be made that already has been made. in leeching agency away from people on the internet and just making things really easy for them. And so I do think actually like to break through and to have a lot of these creative systems that the types of people who hang out in this room are thinking about and building and making work really well actually. You just have to put effort in. And I think retraining a generation of global minds to want to put in that effort is the challenge.
I like to ask people what personalization they've actually done on their social media and if they've ever done any. What have you done? Have you done anything? What personalization have you done?
I mean, I select my blue sky feeds.
You selected people. The only one I've ever done, and I'm doing this, but the only one I've ever done is block the keyword royals.
Oh, I do block some things. Yeah.
Which
I block some
disproportionately affected Lord, which I feel like is bad. I'm so sorry for her.
things. Yeah, it's not her fault.
But that was not an unintended consequence of that.
Yeah, block lists are good. I feel like that's a very like digestible one.
That's the bar.
Yeah.
And it is low.
Yeah.
It is very low.
And like, we're having this conversation here. You ask randos out on the street, like, how much personalization have you done on their social media? Like, what language are you speaking exactly?
It's basically that.
Emily, thank you so much for being here. This is awesome. I want to pick up on a thread that you were talking about with respect to like the power that these 27-year-olds have.
One can confirm.
Yes. So given your experience being in tech, covering tech, etc., what's your sense of their own sense of their accountability for that power? And what scares the people in these companies enough to change behavior?
And unfortunately, my answer to your question is dated in a way that I think is actually like material. But when I worked at Facebook in 2019 and 2020, I worked with a bunch of people who were thoughtful and trying to do the right thing. The genocide in Myanmar had already happened. There were a lot of conversations. Actually, when I went to like, onboarding, it's like college orientation at Facebook headquarters. It's really weird. But there were a number of speeches about the 2016 election and Russian interference and finding that and understanding like Facebook's sort of role and importance in the world. This was really their sort of seed into power. Everything after that was downhill. But they were trying. And it's also like very convenient to rationalize, to see yourself in a somewhat better light than you actually are. And there was a lot of that going on too. What moved them to change their behavior? I was in so many meetings where someone would say, do you know what the headline would be if? And that's why I went and became a journalist. And now I have been having a crisis as a journalist for the past year because we don't have shame anymore. And companies like Facebook or TikTok or whatever the hot company is du jour don't fear the type of accountability journalism that I set out to do as much as they once did, and neither does our government. And I don't know what to do about that, but it's really freaking me out.
Me too. I agree. Any more questions? In the back.
Hi, I was just wondering, why do you think these tech companies, are not scared of that thing? Why do you think, tech companies are not scared of that accountability that you once thought they were scared about?
That's a fair question. I don't know. They're all, nakedly donating to various initiatives in ways that seem a lot like bribery now. Some of them don't respond to reporters the way they used to. I feel like recently I have done, stories that previously I think would make a much bigger splash. And some of it is just that they've been around the, cycle so many times that they've realized that they can weather it and just keep making money, and so maybe it doesn't matter that much. But I do think they are, maybe the public has gotten tired of what they used to call the techlash. Maybe, everybody knows these companies are bad, too bad, what of it? If you want regulators to do something about it, talk to your regulators. Otherwise, meh. Like, I do think they were more scared of it a couple years ago, maybe because they thought that regulators were gonna act on it. Maybe because they thought that, you know, Congress or state legislatures were actually gonna do things, and then they kind of didn't, and they're like, oh, okay, people can talk, but we can still make our money, so who cares? Maybe I'm just jaded.
Maybe. We did call it the Emily problem, so I think
I wasn't even talking about
you
that
are.
problem at this point,
A
but that was a you thing.
Oh, it wasn't me thing. I take credit for that. Well, if there aren't any more questions, I'd just like to sort of end by asking you, if you don't mind, if you were us, what would you do next to sort of make the internet a little bit better?
I'll be back in 2 weeks. Wow, that is a really hard question. I really enjoyed the posters so far, those that I've gotten to read. I think you're doing your work. It's boring, but I do think the more transparency we can get, if there's anyone that's going to publish really bold research about how people's understanding of the world, of world events, of wars, of whatever else, is shaped by 27-year-old goofballs in Silicon Valley, it is this group of people. And there's been a lot of that done, but I do think that's really important. And when you talk about building stuff, I think like probably most of the people in this room could like build a pretty good, you know, like user-centered, meaningful social app or news app or whatever. The challenge is adoption. And so studying that and figuring that out, and like how do we get my mom at least onto like Blue Sky or whatever, like how do we get the ideas in here out there, I think is the most important, because like it's really good to like talk to a lot of really smart people who've spent a lot of time on the problem. It's a lot harder to like go to Thanksgiving and talk about it. We all have to go to Thanksgiving.
We do all have to go to Thanksgiving. Emily Baker-White, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, and I am now very pleased to introduce Brendan and Jen, who are going to talk a little bit about NextSpace, which is the prototype that you've hopefully been playing with during this chat. Brendan and Jen are the engineers, some of the engineers behind it. It's a nice big team. And I will turn it over to them. Thank you so much.
Hey, you guys can hear me. Hi. Yeah, thanks for listening and engaging with our product. My name's Jen Hickey. I'm a senior software engineer here at the Applied Social Media Lab. Much like Emily, actually, I've had multiple careers, including a former career as an attorney working on police misconduct, so it's an interesting coincidence. Yeah, yeah, we will talk after for sure. So I just want to spend just a few minutes talking about the tool that hopefully a lot of you all used during the presentation. And as Nicole mentioned at the beginning, we are very excited to be officially launching it out into the public today. So NextSpace is an ASML project where we're basically trying to use LLMs to create more engaging, insightful, and inclusive events. So this is something we've been working on for quite some time and continue working on. So these are just some of the early ideas that we have for this that I'm going to kind of talk through, both what we use today as well as a few other things that we have to offer as well. So some of the key features of NextSpace, you've seen kind of here, we're in a hybrid event right now that we used it in. So we're live, we're in a room, but we've also got people on a Zoom webinar. So it works in multiple formats. We can do fully virtual events, live events, hybrid events. And as you might have seen if you played around with it, which I'll show the interface in a second for those who didn't get a chance to bring it up, it does have pseudonymous communication. So it's kind of, one of the things I'll be talking about a little bit more is, making people more comfortable engaging with an event. And that's one of the ways in which that helps, hopefully, to feel a little bit more comfortable engaging. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the back end, which is kind of its own project. It's a flexible, customizable back end for experimentation with LLMs in conversations called the LLM Engine, and we have launched that as well as an open source project today. So just want to take a quick second to acknowledge the team for their hard work and say thank you. We have several engineers on the product as well as an awesome product manager, Nicole, our UX designer, and Johnny Richardson, one of the engineers, was supposed to be here with me today. Unfortunately, he had something come up and couldn't make it, but we really appreciate all the work that he's put into the project as well. And of course, our principal investigator, Professor Jonathan Citron. So I'm going to show a couple of things that's currently comprise what we consider to be NextSpace. First is the event assistant, which is what you are playing with today. So basically that's sort of kind of a private event buddy for you to engage with during the event. Can provide recaps to catch you up on things if you got distracted or joined late, and sort of help you clarify some of the points that were made during the event. And of course that's basically just a direct channel that you as audience members have. We have another tool that we didn't use live today, but I'm going to show you a previous demo of it, which we call the back channel. And the back channel is essentially a tool to surface audience interest and questions to the moderator. So it helps audience members engage with the event as well as helps moderators sort of sift through all the audience feedback and tailor the event in real time to what the audience is asking about and what they're interested in. So let me go ahead and get this up. So the first thing I wanted to show is the event assistant, which we use today. I was using it throughout Emily and Meg's talk, so I wanted to just kind of highlight a few of the things that I did with it. Hopefully you all found it useful and did some interesting things with it as well. So I'll first just show the interface. So basically it's kind of question and answer with the chatbot. You can see down here that I have been assigned a random pseudonym, Adaptive Selkie. I do not know what a selkie is. If anybody, I will be looking that up later. But yes, we have a very rich name generation feature. So that is who I am today, apparently. So, essentially I logged on, the event assistant messaged me, told me a little bit about how I could use it to engage with the event. So one of the things that I did, early on that the event assistant can help with, as I mentioned before, was kind of attention and focus support, right? So kind of finding ways to, if your attention drifts, being able to catch back up, join the event, figure out what's going on. So that one of the first things I asked really early on was, I just joined, what did I miss? And this was right after Nicole had talked, so it gave me sort of a rundown of what she had done so far, describing this tool that was very meta, and talking a little bit more about how I can provide feedback. And then a little bit later on, I asked it kind of some deeper dive questions, right? So sometimes concepts come up during an event and either you need clarity because you don't know what ByteDance is, for example, or maybe you just want to know a little bit more about ByteDance. So in that moment, I kind of said, what is ByteDance? Like, who owns it? So it told me a little bit about ByteDance, who started it, when it started, that kind of thing. And then I missed a little bit of what Emily said about what Project Texas was. So I asked her, hey, what did she say Project Texas was? And it kind of caught me up, right, about how it being an initiative by TikTok to limit private user data that was accessible to employees in China. So again, this is just sort of helping me as I'm going through to stay more engaged in the event and get the most out of it. Later on, I wasn't really sure what she said about how they were spying on her. So I asked that question, and it gave me the information about how they tried to access the IP addresses on her phone. And then there was some context I didn't really understand. What is this Emily problem? like somebody mentioned this. I don't know what this is. Why is it funny? So I'm asking it about why would she call it the Emily problem? It told me a little bit. I'm not sure it actually got it exactly right, but it was in the ballpark of what the Emily problem was meant to be. So again, just sort of helping contextual understanding, right? Clarifying when someone maybe uses a very jargony term, or maybe there's just something like the audience or the speaker are reacting in a certain way, or something's coming up where you don't fully understand what's going on in the context of the discussion, that can help you engage as well. And then I kind of wanted another deep dive. So who is Larry Ellison? I don't know who Larry Ellison is. I do, but but for purposes of this presentation, I did not. So it gave me a little bit more information about that. And then lastly, you can kind of use it to sort of help with linguistic encoding. So you could have it kind of help you come up with questions for the Q&A, for example, or even do things like maybe you want to tweet this awesome event to your friends. And so you say, hey, give me a tweet real quick about that I can use to show this to my friends. So these are just kind of some of the things that we've been thinking about doing, to engage, to make events richer and more engaged. And again, like as I'll say at the end of the presentation and throughout, feedback is very much welcome on how this tool went for you and what more we can do with it. But this was kind of our initial start, and we hope that you enjoyed the event assistant. So moving on to our other tool, which we are currently calling the back channel. So the purpose of the back channel, as I mentioned before, was to kind of help surface audience questions and interests to the moderator. So there's a few different needs that we're thinking about there. For people who are in the audience, oftentimes you might have a question, but you don't feel comfortable raising your hand during Q&A. Or maybe you think of something, right in the middle of the event. You obviously can't interrupt it. You don't really remember later on, so you want to kind of get it out there right then. For moderators, obviously there's a lot going on. They're juggling a lot of things. They're trying to curate a meaningful experience for both the speakers and the audience members. And, this is kind of a way for them to get a sense of like where people in the audience are, a temperature check, just kind of like what's the best way to focus the speaker, maybe in the Q&A portion where you can be a little bit more nimble, or for speakers who are like really comfortable adjusting on the fly, you can kind of help adjust that as well. So I'm just going to show you, we used this a little earlier just to kind of tee it up. So I'm going to show you 3 use cases basically for this. So this is the audience view. And it's, again, kind of a simple interface where you can type in messages that go to the moderator channel. Well, first to the LLM for evaluation and then possibly to the moderator channel. There's some quick reaction buttons here. So you can just kind of quickly, like if you have a reaction in the moment, maybe you want to tell the speaker that what they said was really cool. And speakers like to hear that sort of thing. So you might just hit the button. Or if something needs clarification, you can hit the button there. And then also just kind of questions as they come up. So what we did for purposes of this demo earlier, we played just a little bit of Emily's book. And we engaged with it to kind of tee this up. So in the portion that we were listening to, somebody mentioned something about digital dominance. So I asked the question as an audience member, okay, well, why are we assuming the US is digitally dominant? What does that mean? Then later on, there was a discussion about cyber sovereignty. So, I said, how would you deal with something like a cyber sovereignty situation if you had, multinational traffic? And of course, I thought something was cool, as I think lots of things are cool in the book, and so I made a quick reaction there as well. And so for the moderator, what the moderator is seeing is kind of, a more condensed, synthesized version of this that's been put through an LLM to sort of filter out extraneous information, and importantly, to kind of gather shared insight. So because I was doing this with some of my team members, it was able to kind of identify common themes that we were asking about. Oh, there's lots of people asking, or in this case too, asking about digital dominance in the US. There's some people that want to know more about how cyber sovereignty affects global governance. And then, of course, some standalone questions that maybe are really insightful that you want to make sure make it to a moderator, even if it's not a sentiment that's shared amongst the audience. So again, this is kind of our early phase of tools that can really help moderators as well as participants in the event. We also have a live transcript view that's available to the moderator. So that's a little weird with how, there we go, with how I have it thing. So again, this is just as the event is going, this is populating, and so you're able to see that and tie it back essentially to the insights. So again, those are just 2 of the tools that we've been working on the most right now that are available in the open source version. Much more to come, hopefully. One other thing I wanted to show with the NextSpace interface is just, kind of simple event admin, right? So I can get a list of all the events that I have coming up that I'm using these things in. I can quickly schedule a new event, just giving kind of the name, the URL, a little bit about like what kind of experience I want to have. If I wanted to get really fancy, I could give it different models to use under the hood, and this is just a subset of what we have tested it with. But again, being able to kind of, have all my events in one place and organize them and quickly deploy these agents into the event as interventions. So I'll just quickly show the NextSpace repo. I'll have a QR code at the end if you want to pull up the GitHub URL, and also, of course, will be available for questions in the back during the open showcase. But this is the NextSpace front end, so it's basically a React Next.js app, TypeScript, hosted on Vercel. And then, make sure on time, let's go here. I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about the back end. So the back end of this product is what we call LLM Engine. It's essentially kind of a flexible, headless back-end service for developing, evaluating, and deploying LLMs in conversational, multi-user, and multi-turn environments. So essentially you're seeing it today in action on the back end with NextSpace, but it does support multiple front-end clients and could be extended to support more. So for example, one of the biggest examples we have is full Zoom integration. So if this was an entirely virtual meeting, all of the functionality that you saw today on the NextSpace front end could be done through the Zoom chat. So you could have kind of a direct Zoom chat with the event assistant in that without having to use a separate interface. And the back channel works the same way. We have some experimental Slack integration as well, which again we're happy to talk more about and show off later in the showcase, where you can deploy LLMs into Slack conversations. And the screenshot here shows an early prototype we did of an agent that was just sort of listening to everybody and kind of feeding back reflections on shared consensus and just things like that for a little bit of bridging work during a group discussion. So we also have within LLM Engine, aside from being able to deploy to a number of platforms, we have infrastructure for being able to report on how the LLMs did during the event, and also to evaluate their performance across a number of dimensions like correctness, conciseness, hallucination, which hopefully you don't have any of, but it does happen, retrieval relevance, and things like safety as well. And so it works with proprietary or open source models. We have tested it internally with things like Mistral and Llama, so not just the big guys like OpenAI and Claude. And again, it's pluggable and flexible, so the idea is you could put whatever you want in there now that it's open source, and you have the ability to do that. So the underlying infrastructure for the techie people here, it's a Node.js server with TypeScript, uses Mongo for storage, Chroma for RAG, and LangChain for agent integration. So again, please check us out, and we're happy to answer any questions in the back. So here are the links. The QR codes go to the GitHub repos. And here's our contact information as well. We are happy to hear from you later on or now. I think these are also on the posters in the back if you miss it, but we'll keep this slide up for a little while. And we're really looking forward to hearing more of your thoughts and maybe doing some collaborations and seeing what you guys might do with the tools now that they're publicly available. So thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, that concludes the presenter part of our synthesizer. We have snacks and beverages out in the kind of main lobby area if you all want to head out there. We're going to flip this room really quick so that we can get tables in here, people can get set up around the posters that you see. And then you can come back in, ask a lot of questions, people will be demoing. So if you want to kind of get up and start moving. And thank you one more time to all of our guests and presenters, Emily, Meg, Jen, Johnny, who was here in spirit. We appreciate you all, and more to come.
Please make sure to remove your items out of the room with you so that we're able to move all the chairs and bring in the tables. Thank you so much.